I wanted to find a bank with a purpose. I wanted to find a place that would take my money and not use it to cause the financial crisis, but to fix the financial crisis and to help end income inequality.
The people that we employ are usually clients right off the streets. They don't have an account, but Amalgamated is willing to get that started for them.
Their reputation of supporting the working man, I think, speaks for itself. This is a bank that cares for their customers, and I appreciate that.
We were able to access a construction loan through the bank's programs, and that loan has helped us house 28 families in the community.
Amalgamated is a bank that was started for and about working people.
Many of our customers have a deep commitment to advocating for social and economic justice. We share that commitment, and we're not afraid to stand up and say that we need to change some of the way that the country does business.
Giving you everything you need to fight the Trump administration. This is The Bill Press Show. Live at youtube.com/The Bill Press Show.
It is D-Day in Alabama. D-Day for the Republican Party, not just the people of Alabama. What do you say? Hello, everybody. Great to see you on a Tuesday, December 12th. It is the Bill Press Show, and we are here with all the news of the day for the next couple of hours. We'll bring you up to date on what's happening here in Washington, D.C., the latest up in New York City, and the latest down in Alabama as well, as voters go to the polls for what the Secretary of State predicts will be, believe it or not, after all the talk about Alabama, predicts that there will be a turnout in the 25% range. And it was something like 60% in the presidential election of 2016. Hard to believe there will not be more people turning out for this election. I wish all the rest of us could vote. We are glad to see you today. Looking forward to hearing from you. We're coming to you live from Washington, D.C. We're there with you, though, anywhere in this country where you are following us. And we want to hear from you what you think about the news of the day, what you think about 4 women yesterday coming forward with women who had previously accused Donald Trump of sexual harassment, stepping up again and saying now in this Me Too moment, let's get some congressional hearings going into the allegations against Donald Trump himself. Send us your comments on Twitter @BP Show. But first...
This is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. Look up in the sky. There is a cigar-shaped asteroid that went past Earth last month. It is...
Damn, I missed it.
You missed it, yeah. Well, here's the thing. They are scanning this comet because they are concerned that it might be an alien spacecraft. I'm not making that up. There is a team of alien-hunting scientists led by Russian billionaire Yuri Milner. They're going to scan the comet this week because they're looking for radio signals. They say that comet, I mean, there's a picture of it online. We'll put it out there, but it looks like a cigar. Mm-hmm. It's like a giant cigar. They're saying that could be an alien spacecraft.
Did it have flashing lights on it?
No flashing lights. No flashing lights. So... is it a alien spaceship? I don't know, but hopefully we'll find out soon.
Didn't have, like, Virgin Airways on it or anything?
Didn't say anything like that, no. Speaking of the cosmos, yesterday Donald Trump announced that we are going back to the moon. I guess there's still more stuff to figure out and learn about the moon. He said we're not only going to go to the moon, we're going to go back to an eventual mission to Mars. Quote, this time we will not only plant our flag and leave our footprint on the moon, we will establish a foundation for an eventual mission to Mars.
So does this mean that NASA is getting money again?
Well, that's a good question. That was my first question because we notoriously gutted NASA under the Obama administration at the request of Republicans. And now Donald Trump.
I saw part of that news conference yesterday.
Yeah.
And I thought, God, this sounds familiar, right? And I went back. October 11.
Okay.
2016.
Okay.
President Obama announced that NASA's next mission is to go to Mars and dedicate it and put the whole thing on track to go to moon, of course, and on to Mars. Obama did this a year ago, which makes me wonder why Donald Trump didn't cancel the mission.
Right, yeah, exactly. I figured he would have thought it was a bad idea.
Instead of pretend that he thought of it.
Did you see they gave him a little astronaut action figure?
Oh, God.
He's going to have fun today.
Oh, God. I just picture him in the bathtub with his little astronaut playing.
Yeah.
By the way, one final quick story. Do you use Shazam on your phone? It's the
I have it.
You have
No.
it? It's a great thing if you want to figure out a song you're listening to. It tells you what song you're listening to. Well, Apple has bought Shazam. They acquired them yesterday. They say that the deal is worth $400 million.
Seems like a little much.
Seems like a lot.
How essential is that app? It's not that essential.
Yeah.
It's not essential.
No, it's not that essential. I saw some guy use it once, and I was so impressed I downloaded it. I use it once.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Come on, Alabama, get out and vote and do the right thing. Reject Roy Moore. Hey, hello, everybody. Yep, this is the day we've been waiting for. It is Election Day in Alabama. It is Tuesday, December 12th. Great to see you today. Here on the Bill Press Show, booming out to you live all across this great land of ours. We're so glad to be with you all the way from California to New York City and beyond, here and north, south, east, west on the Bill Press Show. Coming to you online on YouTube, youtube.com/The Bill Press Show. And don't forget, sign up, subscribe, be official part of the team. Looking at you on Free Speech TV as well, and of course, joining you out in Chicago on WCPT, the great progressive voice of Chicago, and Indiana Talks in the whole state of Indiana. Thanks so much for joining us today. Remember, don't just sit back and listen. Let us know what you think about the news of the day. Your take on the big stories, particularly what's happening in Alabama, and on renewal of sexual harassment charges against Donald Trump, which we saw yesterday. You know how to do it. Your comments on Twitter @BP Show. Yes, indeed, coming to you live, as we said, from Washington, D.C. But the big focus is, of course, down on Alabama. And by the way, let's not forget, just the fact that there is an election today means that the Republicans blew one great opportunity. Remember, when the allegations against Roy Moore first came out, there were those, one of them being the senior senator from Alabama, or Richard Shelby, who said, whoa, hold the phone. In fact, Mitch McConnell at the time said the same thing. Whoa, hold the phone. Let's not rush into this now that we know what a sleaze bag Roy Moore really is. Let's delay the election and give somebody else a chance to mount a campaign, another Republican, to mount a campaign against Roy Moore, or at best, mount a serious write-in campaign against Roy Moore. Delay the election, or then call another, or then have the governor call another special election. At any rate, put it off is the point that I'm making. They didn't do that. So now they have rolled out the red carpet, if you will, for Roy Moore in Alabama. The governor did that. Just rejected all the requests of some national Republicans to do that. So they've made their bed. They're going to have to lie in it today. They got no choice. Well, they do have a choice. They got a choice. They're either going to have to not vote, write in somebody else, vote for Doug Jones, or vote for Roy Moore. And, you know, it's you can't really read. Nobody knows what's going to happen down there. Nobody knows. There was a Fox News poll yesterday that I saw, a Fox News poll, which had Doug Jones up by 10 points. But
Jesus.
But so you don't know. But the problem is there are some people who are going to vote for Doug Jones who would never tell a pollster, I'm going to vote for Doug Jones. And there's some people who are going to vote for Roy Moore who would never admit that they're going to vote for Roy Moore.
Yeah.
So I got to tell you, anything could happen. I honestly believe that win or lose, there's going to be hell to pay for the Republican Party after today, because if they lose, they're going to have a Democratic senator from Alabama. If they lose, it's going to be a total repudiation of Donald Trump and Roy Moore and Steve Bannon. If they lose, by the way, it'll also be, I think, a credit to the Republicans of Alabama for rejecting this guy. Of course, they won't see it that way.
Sure.
And if they lose, they're going to have a hell of a lot harder time getting that turkey of a tax bill passed through the Senate. If they win, they may have one more vote for the tax cut bill. Maybe, by the way, because Roy Moore's not going to do Mitch McConnell any favors. But they'll also be saddled with Roy Moore. And they're either going to have to start ethics committee investigations against him and throw him out, or they're going to have to go before the country next year in the midterm elections of 2018 and defend this pedophile. And every Republican running for office, whether it's school board or city council, whether it's in Arizona or South Dakota or Georgia, is going to have to answer, where do you stand on Roy Moore? He will be a millstone around their necks. So I think it's a lose-lose for the Republican Party, but I'm just hoping that the people of Alabama show that they do have a good, solid moral streak, that they do believe in the tenets of Christianity, and they will stand up, these evangelicals in Alabama, and reject this sexual pervert named Roy Moore.
I really hope we do a show tomorrow that celebrates a big win by a Democrat in Alabama. But to me, as you've been pointing out, this story is so much bigger than Alabama, which is often subject to ridicule, and deservedly so, for their politics. I mean, they gave us Jeff Sessions, they gave us Richard Shelby, they've given us countless terrible Republicans over the years. But, it really can't be overstated at the role that the Republicans played in normalizing Roy Moore. And yes, Mitch McConnell said the right thing when he came out originally and said, I believe the women. And yes, kudos to Jeff Flake, I guess, for sending a check to Doug Jones saying party over country.
$100.
$100.
Yeah.
But the RNC, Ronna McDaniel, who leads it, Mitch McConnell flipped his sort of position on it. You see a lot of Republicans flipping their position on it. They normalized what happened with Roy Moore. The scandal was bad. The scandal stayed bad for a couple of days. You saw that reflected in the polls. And then it was back to business as usual. It was back to tribalism as usual. And as you pointed out, this is purely a numbers game, I think, at this point. This is a matter of getting people out to vote. And like you said, there are going to be plenty of people who said that they maybe wouldn't vote for Roy Moore who are, or won't admit to voting for Roy Moore, and people who won't admit to voting for Doug Jones who are. But the bottom line is, there are probably plenty of Republicans around Alabama who are pissed off at Roy Moore and will probably just stay home. Rather than vote for Doug Jones, they'll probably just stay home.
But you know what? If that's your choice, that's good. Just stay home.
Yeah, just stay home. No, absolutely.
Republicans, stay home. Democrats, you better get out.
You got to get out. That's the other part.
And that was a message in a robocall, by the way, yesterday in Alabama. We know that we played that for you yesterday. Donald Trump put out a robocall in support of Roy Moore. Barack Obama came out, and Joe Biden both, with robocalls in support of Doug Jones, which could prove to be very, very significant. Again, the key is turnout. The key particularly is African-American turnout. Barack Obama had the largest African-American turnout in the history of Alabama in 2008, 2012. And if he can persuade African-Americans particularly to get out and vote this time, that could make the difference. I think that's very, very important that President Obama weighed in. Meanwhile, yesterday in Alabama, Roy Moore had a big rally in front of a crowd in a barn, a few hundred people there. His wife was the star of the show, and she wanted to be sure that everybody knows that Roy Moore, he ain't no racist and he ain't no anti-Semite. She makes sure that the media there in the back of the hall hear her message. This is proof that he's not anti-Semitic.
Fake news would tell you that we don't care for Jews. I tell you all this because I've seen it all, so I just want to set the record straight while they're here.
Waves to the media while they're here.
One of our attorneys is a Jew.
Oh, God, that is so bad.
Good morning.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is a Jew.
Mm-hmm.
A Jew. That's what she said.
A Jew. One of our attorneys is a Jew.
By the way, if you're not from the South, what she means is a person of Jewish descent is one of their attorneys.
Mm-hmm. Some of my best friends are black. You know.
No, somehow that is 100 times worse than saying, I have a black friend.
Yeah.
Just pronunciation alone. She sounds like one of the biggest bigots alive.
Just the way she says it, I'm telling you. Yeah.
Is a Jew.
He's a Jew, yeah. And at that same rally appears, I love this. Okay. Here's a message. Here's a guy who got fired from the White House, who lives in Washington, D.C., who goes to Alabama to tell the people to vote for Roy Moore. And here is Steve Bannon's message. Listen carefully.
I know one thing. Nobody can come down here and tell folks in Alabama what to do.
That's exactly what he's doing. That's exactly what he's doing. He's going down there and telling them to vote for Roy Moore, right?
You know.
No, but I mean, he's so dumb. But again,
we can mock this. We can mock this. But like, these are those voters in Alabama are, I would say, majority low information voters.
Yeah. No.
And I'm sorry, they just don't understand. They don't get who Steve Bannon really is.
Bannon's biggest blunder last night, by the way, from our friend John Allen, who was on the ground reporting. Yeah. John Allen tweeting last night, in Midland City, Alabama, Steve Bannon goes after Joe Scarborough, saying he got into better schools than Joe could have, Georgetown and Harvard. This might be the wrong place for that attack. Joe went to the University of Alabama.
Roll Tide. Roll damn Tide.
Well, but you know, think about it. Who the hell is Steve Bannon, and who cares what he says? I mean, suddenly he is putting himself out there, right, as this great political strategist and this big celebrity star. He's not, right? He lives on this little townhouse on 4th Street right here in Capitol Hill, and he's basically a schlub. Nobody came from Bright. He was a failure at Hollywood. He was a failure on Wall Street. He got the Breitbart thing going. He failed in the White House, and now he's out there. Well, let me put it this way. You know, and there were two surrogates in Alabama yesterday. Right. Steve Bannon for Roy Moore and Charles Barkley for Doug Jones.
Yeah.
Who would you go with?
Look, I always go with Charles Barkley. Well, I shouldn't say always, most of the time.
Yeah.
But, you know.
I mean, Steve Bannon's the best you could do.
Who else is going to put their name in front of a Roy Moore sign?
Donald Trump. Yeah. By the way, also yesterday, Doug Jones had a big rally yesterday. He's been looking better as a candidate the last couple of days. And he talked about his chances, having a little fun here, with his chances. What are his chances of winning? Doug Jones.
Somebody said, well, what are the odds of Doug Jones winning? It's about like getting under 5-inch snowfall in Birmingham the 1st of December.
Which is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. You would think otherwise, that maybe that would be never happened. Yeah, it did. 1st of December. So this could be, maybe that snow was a good sign. Good sign. Let's certainly hope so. Meanwhile, yesterday morning, oh man, the Me Too movement got somebody else caught up in the Me Too movement yesterday. No, I'm not talking about Ryan Lizard from the New Yorker. No, I'm not talking about Mario Batali. No, I'm not talking about Harold Ford Jr. Donald Trump got snagged again yesterday by 3 women who went on the Megyn Kelly show. A 4th woman joined them at a news conference calling on Congress to investigate the charges against Donald Trump, charges that they made back in 2016, and nobody listened to them. Here is Rachel Crooks with her story.
I ask that Congress put aside their party affiliations and investigate Mr. Trump's history of sexual misconduct.
Samantha Holvey, another one of the women, is saying maybe Donald Trump ought to take a lesson from Al Franken.
Other folks have resigned. I think he should. I don't think he ever will.
Exactly. But they did call on Congress to resign. And this is, I think, a very, very important point. Of course, it dominated a very contentious White House briefing yesterday with Sarah Huckabee Sanders, reporters pushing her on what the White House reaction was to these women. And notice as, once again, Sarah Huckabee Sanders tries to just dismiss this whole thing as something that was settled a long time ago.
The president has addressed these accusations directly and denied all of these allegations, and this took place long before he was elected to be president.
So notice their defense, which really is pathetic. He denied it, so therefore it didn't happen. He was elected president after these came out, so therefore it's all settled. No, it's not. No, it's not. I think these women are very credible. Remember, there are, some over a dozen, some 13 or 14 of them. Their stories, they've never really had a hearing. Donald Trump called them liars, called them fabricators. One of those cases, we keep reminding you of this, is active and open in the New York Supreme Court, where the White House is taking the official position that this case cannot go forward because now he is the president of the United States. The Supreme Court will decide whether it can go forward. I think they have no choice but to allow it to go forward after the U.S. Supreme Court, facing the same question with Bill Clinton versus Paula Jones, said, of course, the president's not above the law. You can depose the president of the United States, which attorneys in that case, Ken Starr's attorneys, did at the White House. So this attempt for the White House to say he was elected president, end of story. No, it's not the end of the story. Or to put it another way, I think in this Me Too moment, Donald Trump does not get a free pass. No free pass for Donald Trump. Let's let these women come forward. As Nikki Haley said on Sunday, they deserve to be heard.
It's also kind of interesting just to watch how different men have handled the accusations that they've received. Some of them admitted to bad behavior and were quickly sort of pushed out of their jobs. Some of them didn't exactly admit to it and were still pushed out of their jobs.
The only one I think admitted is Al Franken.
Al Franken didn't admit it. I mean, when he announced he was resigning, he still said that the women weren't or that it wasn't true. But some of them have said
the most serious allegations weren't true.
Right. Right.
Yeah. He admitted that he might have put his hand in where he shouldn't have.
Right.
Yeah.
But my point is,
He didn't call them liars and fabricators.
Donald Trump is coming out and, like, over the years that this has happened, right? Called them lies, called them total nonsense. He insinuated that one woman that accused him of it was too ugly for him to sexual harass.
Yeah.
Remember that from the campaign?
Yeah.
He just won't, he doesn't get it. He doesn't acknowledge it. And it's kind of scary that he's been able to make it as far as he has with this type of stuff.
No, I disagree. He does get it. He knows exactly what he did. He bragged about it. I mean, I know what you mean. He knows what
I think
he
in
did.
his heart of hearts he gets it, but he's not showing anybody that he's remorseful at all or that there might be any changes
because
to his
that's who he
behavior.
is.
Yeah, I know.
That's who he is. He's a celebrity, so he gets to grab women by their you-know-what.
And 12 minutes ago, he linked the two biggest stories, the two biggest accusations against him, collusion with Russia and the sexual misconduct allegations. Donald Trump tweeting at Real Donald Trump 12 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Despite thousands of hours wasted and many millions of dollars spent, the Democrats have been unable to show any collusion with Russia. So now they're moving on to the false accusations and fabricated stories of women who I don't know and or have never met. Fake news. It's Donald Trump on Twitter 14 minutes ago.
Again, let's let these women come forward and tell their stories. He certainly met every single one of them.
That's provable, right?
Yeah. One of them, remember, is one of the young women who was in the Miss Universe contest. These were teenagers in their dressing room, and Donald Trump, some of them naked, and Donald Trump walks in and says, "I'm allowed in here because I own this pageant." Yeah, this is who Donald Trump is. Meanwhile, yesterday, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand stepped up. We know that previously, Senators Jeff Merkley and Cory Booker and Bernie Sanders all said, again, in this Me Too moment, that Donald Trump should resign. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand asked about that yesterday. She joined the club.
These allegations are credible. They are numerous. I've heard these women's testimony, and many of them are heartbreaking. And President Trump should resign his position. Whether he will ever hold himself accountable is something, you really can't hold your breath for. And so Congress should have hearings. They should do their investigation. They should have appropriate investigations of his behavior and hold him accountable.
So we could debate whether or not, and I noticed there's an op-ed in the New York Times this morning by her name, Teachout. Remember she ran for Zephyr Teachout, who says she doesn't think that Al Franken should have resigned. We can debate that, yes or no, but he did, or said that he's going to. But certainly, if Al Franken resigns, and he's going to resign, he said he is. If Al Franken has to resign, then I think it makes a lot. I mean, it's logical. You can make a strong argument, and I would agree that if Al Franken's out, Donald Trump ought to be out. I mean, he's accused of doing a lot worse than Al Franken was accused of. He has called them liars and fabricators, as we pointed out. There are more women. There are only allegations, but there hasn't been any trial or any ethics committee hearing on Al Franken either. I mean, why is it that Al Franken's got to go, but Donald Trump stays? Only because Donald Trump has been elected since? Well, Al Franken was elected to the Senate since. You see what I mean? I mean, so I think this is not over for Donald Trump. It's going to eventually bite him in the ass. I think it's already starting to. And if you saw the news conference yesterday with Sarah Huckabee Sanders trying to respond to this, I think you sense that the White House is panicking. Maybe panicking is too strong a word, but they don't know how to handle it. So the best they can do is come back, as we said, Sarah Huckabee Sanders said, well, come on, this is already settled because he's already been elected. And then she went on to say, well, she's trying to have it both ways here. It's good that all these women come forward, she says, but not against us.
He thinks it's a good thing that women are coming forward, but he also feels strongly that a mere allegation shouldn't determine the course. And in this case, the president has denied any of these allegations, as have eyewitnesses.
So, you see, yeah, it's important that so he wants to be part of the Me Too movement, right? Yeah. Yes, let's have all these women come forward, unless they come forward to talk about me, in which case I deny it, call them liars, and I was already elected, so it doesn't apply to me. Now, that's an impossible position for them to hold for very long.
No, I think you're right. I mean, they
going to get
have
caught
up until
this.
this point, but I think that we did sort of go over a bit of a tipping point earlier this year, last month or month before that, when we got into this Me Too situation, this whole reckoning on terrible men and their bad behavior. I'd like to think this is going to catch up with Donald Trump, but I don't know. He can take a lie pretty damn far.
No, he can. He can. These women that came forward yesterday, it was interesting. One of them said, this is the last place I want to be.
Yeah.
Because they did this a year ago. And what did they get? They got a lot of abuse, right? From a lot of Republicans, not just Donald Trump, other Republicans backing up Donald Trump, who basically, who said they were liars. They were just making it up. They were paid by Democrats. They were stooges for Hillary, all that kind of stuff. And then they went away. But they came back because one of them made this point is that the temperature has really changed in the last year. It's changed in the last month, right, since Harvey Weinstein. This is the country is in a different place right now, a different mood right now on this issue. So I would hope that they would get, that they'd be listened to more seriously and people would take them more seriously. And I think they might have more of an impact now than they did a year ago.
Yeah, that's a good thing to wish for and a good thing to hope for.
We'll see what Congress does. But I'll tell you one thing.
I mean, what are they going to do? They're not going to do anything.
The idea that Congress is going to hold hearings on Donald Trump, forget about it.
That's not going to happen.
Forget about it. But, again, so much is happening. If Doug Jones gets elected and Democrats have 49, right? If the Democrats take back the House, boom, 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 boom. You could see the scenario where there could be hearings against Donald Trump and the pressure could build on. So with that hopeful note, let's take a quick break here. I didn't tell you about our guest today. We got a great, great lineup, starting with Tierney Sneed from Talking Points Memo. She'll be joining us just a couple of minutes here. Chris Liu is a former U.S. Deputy Secretary of Labor in studio with us as well. And then winding up the day with Eliza Collins, who covers the Congress for USA Today. What a star lineup. Tierney Sneed joining us. Take a quick break. We'll be right back here on the Bill Press Show.
One of our attorneys is a Jew.
Download our podcast, search for The Bill Press Show on iTunes, and remember to rate, review, and subscribe. This is The Bill Press Show. All right, friends, we got some big news today as we close up this pledge drive for Free Speech TV. This is the last week. Remember, if you haven't already made your pledge, please do so today and be as generous as you can in this holiday spirit to keep Free Speech TV on the air. Remember, again, we depend on you entirely for Free Speech TV. No government money, no corporate money, no Koch brothers money. It's all you. We give you the news every day. We give you our best progressive take on the news every day. You keep us on the air, and you tune in every day. What a great partnership. Let's keep it going. So please, today, make your pledge for Free Speech TV. Make your contribution to keep Free Speech TV alive and on the air. 877-378-8669 is how you do it by phone. 877-378-8669, or go online to freespeech.org/donate. Now, here is the big news. Thanks to one of our great, great friends, we have a $10,000 matching gift for the rest of this week, for the rest of the pledge drive. A friend has given that $10,000 to Free Speech TV in memory of his friend, Ms. Jane. And that means that up to $10,000 for every dollar you give, it'll be matched by our good friend, again, in honor of Ms. Jane. So that means help with $30. That's a $60 pledge, equivalent to a $60 pledge. Help with 60, that's $120. I don't have to do all the math. Help with $500, that's a $1,000 pledge. And you can make your way to Washington, and Carol and I will take you out to dinner, and we'll invite you in to meet the whole team and have a great time here in the show. So please take advantage of this opportunity. As we've told you several times, there are lots of good reasons to be part of the Free Speech TV team and to contribute to Free Speech TV. Yes, to keep Free Speech TV on the air. Yes, to fight back against Donald Trump and be part of the resistance, which starts right here every day on Free Speech TV. And yes, to take advantage of that tax deduction at the end of the year. And now, yes, to take advantage of this $10,000 matching gift. Double your money, double your fun right here at Free Speech TV. But do it today. Do it now. Operator standing by to take your call at 877-378-8669, 877-378-8669, or you can go to freespeech.org/donate, freespeech.org/donate. But please, don't let Free Speech TV fail. Don't let Free Speech TV go away. Keep us on the air with your pledge. Thank you.
Same great show, new great channel. Stream live video at youtube.com/The Bill Press Show.
It is Decision Day in Alabama, Tuesday, December 12. Hey, hello, everybody. Great to see you today. The Bill Press Show, live from Washington, D.C. Welcome to the program. Don't forget, your comments always welcome on Twitter, at BP Show. And yes, indeed, I know what you're thinking. How about that scarf, Bill? Yes, indeed, those of you watching on television can see the beautiful scarf. It's a hand-woven scarf by my wife, Carol Press, and you can have one too. Just go to great time to give yourself a special gift for the holidays or make a special gift to someone you love, of course. Go to BillPressShow.com, our website. Follow the link to the Carol Press scarves, and you'll see lots of colors and different colors and designs you can choose from. And I got to tell you, the only place busier than Carol Press these days is Amazon. Mm-hmm. I think they're shipping out a lot of packages. God, so is she. A lot of orders for scarves. So get yours in. This is Rayon Chenille. She also does them in bamboo. BillPressShow.com BillPressShow.com. Link to Carol Press scarves. And we welcome Tierney Sneed to the program from Talking Points Memo, political reporter. Hi, Tierney. Nice to see you.
Good morning.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
We want to jump right into it, but first, we've been at it for a while, and our Twitter account has been going wild. Jamie follows that for us. Jamie, what's up?
Yeah, let's go ahead and check in on Twitter. We are tweeting at BP Show. That's where you can find us on Twitter. We put up a poll earlier this morning, just as the show was starting. It is Election Day in Alabama. Does Doug Jones have a chance against Roy Moore? That's the question we're asking you. Weigh in on our Twitter page. So far, 79% of you say yes. 21% say no.
All right.
So that's early results. You have until pretty much election morning or the day after tomorrow. Melanie weighing in, offering a comment.
I just want to point out that I hope Doug Jones wins. The margin will not be, if he does, it will not be 79 to 21.
Razor thin.
Can I go out on a limb?
I think press polls aren't scientific.
That is fair.
Sampling matching the Alabama electorate.
Melody Miller weighing in on Twitter, offering a comment. Russia's plan has been to dismantle America, so scary that the RNC is helping them destroy us. Are these people, Gowdy, Ryan, etc., Russians who can save us? It's a good segue for what Tierney will be talking about with us. Right. On YouTube, we're on YouTube live streaming video. We have a chat room going up there on the page, youtube.com/The Bill Press Show. Gerald says, Trump will be thrown out of office. Maybe it's obstruction of justice. Maybe the women. So there you go. Keep those comments coming in. youtube.com/The Bill Press Show, and on Twitter at BP Show. Follow us if you haven't already, and make sure to go ahead and vote on that poll for Doug Jones.
Thank you, Jamie. Yes, it is. So, Tierney, we've been talking so much about Alabama, about the accusations of sexual harassment against many different men from different professions, including the President of the United States. Meanwhile, the Russian investigation just keeps humming along, right?
Humming along.
Right, under the radar. You were in court yesterday.
Yeah, I was there.
On this issue, what was up?
Paul Manafort and Rick Gates were back in court. They're still under house arrest, how many months later, 2 months later, a month and a half later, because there's been some issues. Special counsel Mueller's team has said that they can't even really confirm, the worth of their assets and their net worth to come up with a bail package. So there's been a lot of procedural hiccups, and the biggest one, of course, this past week was Paul Manafort was accused of ghostwriting an op-ed for a Ukrainian outlet that was basically kind of defending his Ukraine work. And his lawyers, of course, said that he didn't really have anything to do with it until Mueller's team turned over a document they said showed the track changes that Manafort had added to the op-ed. So he got a scolding from the judge yesterday who told him, there's a gag order on this case. You're not supposed to be talking to media. this applies to everyone, and this is exactly what I'm talking about when I say don't talk to media.
What was he doing? What was he thinking?
We've heard a couple different stories, both, his lawyers and the court documents. My colleague was in touch with the person whose byline was on the op-ed, and, their story is that this guy just took on the initiative to write this op-ed on his own and checked with one of Manafort's longtime colleagues about the accuracy, and it got passed on to Manafort. But then you see Manafort kind of inserts these lines and points that have been sort of long-held talking points of his to defend his work. So I don't know if he just didn't really think he was going to get caught or what, but either way, it's definitely another hiccup as he's trying to get out of home confinement.
Right. And when does he go to trial, actually?
They haven't set a date yet. I think the earliest we could see it is late spring, but it might even be later than that. They're still working on the, very beginning of the schedule and all the kind of pretrial issues that have to be figured out before that.
So when the White House says that, which I've heard them say several times, that this whole investigation is winding down, it'll be over by the end of the year. What are they thinking?
Yeah, from their perspective, the only way I kind of see that making sense with what's really going on is that maybe they think that their aides will be done with their interviews, as we know, a number of top aides have been interviewed in recent weeks. Yeah. But it's as more stuff comes out, it seems every couple of weeks there's a new indictment that sheds light on a whole different episode or a different period in this whole span of time that just raises a whole host of new questions. It's hard to think that all those questions are going to be answered in the next couple of weeks.
All right. So yesterday was Manafort and Gates and Papadopoulos, and let's not forget him.
Yeah.
Today is Michael Flynn. What's the difference between the charges against Manafort, Gates, and the charges against Michael Flynn?
Well, one big difference is that Michael Flynn has pleaded guilty and appears to be cooperating with the Mueller investigation, while Manafort and Gates are sort of have pleaded not guilty and are by all signs look like they're going to fight the charges.
And there are a lot more charges filed against Manafort and Gates.
Yeah, so there's 12 counts, and the White House spin is this is stuff that they were doing well before they were on the campaign. It's not Russia related, but it's at the very best a gray area, because at least according to charging documents, some of these money laundering and tax evasion alleged crimes were happening all the way up into 2016. And when you're looking at sort of the figures and the lobbying work that was implicated, it's people that we think that they were still talking to during the campaign. So there's at least questions that need to be sorted out,
But if they can dismiss Manafort and Gates as being basically pre-Trump team, they can't say that about Michael Flynn, can
No, and that's why his cooperation was such a huge win for the Mueller team, because he is someone who was there from the beginning of the campaign, from, I think, February, March 2016. So really the bulk of campaign, he was a top aide, and then he was there through the transition, and then he was there the first 2-3 weeks before he was ousted. And he's also key to the decision to fire James Comey, because according to James Comey's account, President Trump asked him to go easy on Flynn. So he's really kind of either being a person in the room or being a person that was kind of an element of a major decision through this whole time span.
So the two tracks we've been told, or at least it's been reported, that Mueller is on, are 1, collusion, and 2, obstruction of justice,
yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Do you see it that way? Okay. Michael Flynn is an avenue to both of those, isn't he?
He definitely he was in the room or was involved in or directly contacting, Russian ambassador. And,
so that's the collusion stuff.
Yeah,
right.
So that raises those questions. And yes, then there's, this decision to fire Comey. And there's also a question of whether, the question people are asking now is, with Flynn lying to the FBI as he pleaded guilty to, who knew about that decision, and where did that...
Donald Trump says he did.
And so
he tweeted out that he knew he was lying to the FBI.
Yeah,
right?
Very problematic tweet for his legal team, to say the least. And the question is, who knew he lied to the FBI? Why was he? If someone did know, someone top up in the Trump administration or Trump himself knew that he lied, Why was he allowed to stay in the White House for 2 to 3 weeks? And did he lie on his own accord, or did someone tell him to lie? So these are all major questions that are kind of swirling around the White House.
All right. So Michael Flynn is cooperating. We know that. Robert Mueller told us that, and Flynn hasn't denied it. And he's cooperating on these 2 tracks, collusion and obstruction of justice. Who could he implicate? Whom in the White House could he implicate in either of those tracks?
I mean, on the Russian communications track,
Who ought to be nervous?
I mean, we know that from these charging documents that a host of figures were at Mar-a-Lago and knew that he was talking to the Russian ambassador. We also have, among the things that the charging documents also raised were the communications earlier in December during a UN vote to lobby behind the scenes back channel on a UN vote on Israel. And we have reports showing that Jared Kushner was in on those communications. So you have at least a lot of people who knew he was having these contacts. A lot of those people lied to the press about those contacts. Lying to the press isn't necessarily a crime.
So Jared Kushner, Donald Jr.?
Donald Jr. is implicated in other points of this timeline. I haven't seen anything about him being there for the sort of late transition issues, but he's certainly...
Well, the famous meeting in June 2016.
Yeah, earlier on in the timeline, he's certainly implicated, and that's where you kind of see Paul Manafort is implicated because he was also in that Trump Tower meeting. So, yeah, it's a whole web of different people at different times.
So how about Trump himself and Mike Pence?
I mean, Vice President Pence has a talent for somehow never being in the room or aware of all these key decisions. And either he just has a radar to know that something bad or sketchy is about to happen and removing himself from the situation.
But do you really believe he didn't know why Trump was firing Comey?
I mean, we're going to find out, I think, at some point what he knew and when he knew. But
okay.
I mean, he's been walking a line of being, the person who obviously has to remain very loyal and, stand up for Trump. But I think also kind of sees the long game and knows that whether Trump, makes it to the end of his term or not, Mike Pence wants to be the heir apparent and, make his own political career keep moving forward regardless of what happens to Trump. So I think he has to play both sides of it.
Right. How about, so could Flynn implicate the president himself?
I mean, it'll depend. One key question is if Trump was telling Comey lay off of Flynn, what did he know about Flynn's legal problems? Where did he find out about legal problems? And did Flynn himself say, hey, Mr. President, I'm in trouble. I lied to the FBI. I'm under investigation. What can you tell me? So that's one bigger question is what Flynn knew about President Trump's request to Comey at the time and whether that played a role in Comey eventually being fired.
Whatever happened to Flynn's son?
That's a good question. He's still tweeting. He's still tweeting
He's
along.
still out there, right?
No, really?
Yeah, he's still tweeting. So, I mean, at this point, there's a lot of questions on whether he would be swept out on this and whether Mueller would, ultimately charge Flynn Jr. as well, because Flynn has been, his father's chief of staff, top aide. When you talk about some of the sketchy business dealings, it seems like the son was involved in a lot of these business deals.
Yeah, there was some speculation at the time that Michael Flynn, Daddy, was cooperating partly to save his son.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something. It's definitely a theory. It's definitely. I mean, when you looked at the sort of charges the charging document, and compare that based on what we kind of know from all the other sort of reports and congressional investigations to Flynn's sort of business, it does seem like there was a lot of things that were left off that could have been at least mentioned or alluded to that weren't in terms of some of the other stuff that Flynn has been accused of.
Now, not to mention the opposition, but there's been a story the last couple of days on Politico. I've seen the headline. I haven't read it. That missing in all the talk about the Russian, one name missing in all the talk about the Russian investigation is Steve Bannon.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Isn't it strange? I mean,
it's pretty interesting.
I mean, he was right there.
He was right there, and
I mean, at least I haven't seen his name.
Yeah, I don't know if maybe he just, as far as we know, if you compare sort of Manafort and Flynn's sort of foreign business. Mm-hmm. Foreign lobbying, Bannon for all the, all the sort of questionable things in his background. It doesn't seem like, he kept most of his troubles domestic, or most of his scandalous behavior domestic. So maybe he wasn't as exposed in that sense.
Maybe he was smart enough to say, "Oh, this is a meeting about Russia. I have another meeting over here I've got to go to."
Yeah, I mean, maybe he kind of knew that this wasn't a place he wanted to be, and we know that there were a lot of while he was there, a lot of intra-White House rivalries, him and Kushner, him and Priebus.
Thank God that's over.
Thank God they're all getting along swell. That, maybe he saw the sort of questions about all of this as something to his advantage when he's looking at Kushner as this is a vulnerability for Kushner. Let me make sure that this is not a vulnerability for myself.
And are the Senate and House investigations still ongoing? And
they're still chugging along. Some are more dysfunctional than others.
Yeah. The House isn't functioning at all.
No, and we're seeing sort of a rift in the House where you have Republicans now who are trying to make it about unmasking. They're trying to make it about, what was Clinton's ties to these other Russia-related deals under the Obama administration. They're trying to make it about who are these Mueller officials, people on Mueller's team, and were they Clinton supporters? They're making it about
the uranium deal.
Yeah, the uranium deal. They're making it about the dossier, whether the dossier was just a Democratic smear campaign. It appears they're trying to look for any other sort of exit route from the central question as a way to sort of distract, to bolster Trump, to undermine the central investigation. So that's what we're seeing on the House, and to a certain extent, I think on the Senate Judiciary Committee, Chuck Grassley has also signaled interest in those sort of avenues. So at this point, it seems like the Senate Intel one is the only one that hasn't completely been disrupted by internal dysfunction and Republican-Democratic infighting, at least not in a public sense, the way it's kind of been publicly evident.
Under Richard Burr and Mark Warner.
Under Richard Burr and Mark Warner.
Only one of the three that's really has any potential, I guess,
or a bipartisan. I think what we'll see from these other congressional investigations is minority and majority reports and whatnot. But it seems like the Senate Intel, they're trying their best at least to keep it bipartisan and keep it on the central mission.
So what's the worst that could happen out of the Mueller investigation for Donald Trump?
Sky's the limit, right?
Yeah, obviously the kind of liberal pipe dream is an indictment against President Trump. I'm very skeptical. It seems by all signs, that this legal operation is set up to protect President Trump, and I think we could see from the reaction to that tweet from over the weekend or 2 weekends ago, where he seemed to implicate himself in obstruction of justice. You had John Dowd, his personal lawyer, immediately claimed to write the tweet and fall on his sword. So I think the legal operation is to set up to protect Trump at all means possible. The next question is whether an impeachment could happen, and I think that would be depending on how the 2018 elections go, or you just have all your top aides, facing criminal charges. Your son facing criminal charges, your son-in-law facing criminal charges. I think that is kind of where I see the worst case scenario for President Trump.
Right, that everyone around him maybe is indicted, and then he's forced to either stay there alone or resign.
He's just isolated.
Yeah, right.
He had a loyalty to Flynn for months after Flynn was ousted, and I think he's still really upset about what's happened to Flynn. That imagine if a similar fate is facing his son-in-law or his son.
He could pardon all of them?
He can pardon all of them for federal crimes. So the tea leaves that we've all been reading is any sign that there's an effort to bring state and local crimes. And there is a line in the charging documents or the pleading documents with Flynn that says he's instructed to cooperate with state and local officials. There's been reports that the New York Attorney General's office has been working on Manafort stuff. So it appears that Mueller's at least aware of this threat of a pardon from Trump and is doing what he can to bring other sorts of crimes that Trump couldn't pardon.
So I didn't realize that the president cannot pardon for a state crime.
Correct.
Okay. Can he pardon himself for a federal crime?
That's a hotly debated topic. So I am not a constitutional lawyer, so I'm not going to give a definitive answer, but it's certainly something people are asking, and I don't think people are taking off the table that he might try.
You know damn well he's right.
Yeah, right.
No doubt about it. So we heard yesterday from four women who've been there in the past, were sort of ignored in the past or reviled in the past when they made their accusations against Donald Trump. He denied it. He called them liars and fabricators and threatened to said he was going to sue every one of them for defaming him, which he did not sue even one of them. Will they be paid any more attention this year than they were last year?
I think so. I don't think this is going away. And I think it's, the momentum is building. I mean, there's a question people have asked that, while we've seen so many people in the entertainment industry sort of have to be sort of ousted, we're seeing people in all other industries that are, getting fired and at very least,
in the media, for sure.
In the media that, at some point this has got to hit the political world in the way that people are actually held accountable. And I just think Republicans, particularly the White House, when there was a moment during, I think it was the Al Franken stuff, where you have all these RNC press releases, everyone has to donate their Franken donations, this or that, and it's like, do you really want to walk down this avenue, considering, do you really want to set this precedent? And I think it's, the White House is kind of in a catch-22. You can't say, well, we believe these accusers, but not the accusers against the president. I mean, the questions are just...
Well, Sarah Huckabee Sanders tried to straddle that fence yesterday, Jamie, if we can again, where she said, no, we want these women to come forward.
Yeah.
But
he thinks it's a good thing that women are coming forward, but he also feels strongly that a mere allegation shouldn't determine the course. And in this case, the president has denied any of these allegations, as have eyewitnesses.
Mm-hmm. Right. And he's denied them. So therefore, if it's like, we want them all to come forward, but all those women that came forward against us, forget them,
this
because
is sort
they're all
of
liars.
What we feared with this moment is that it's being weaponized.
Yeah.
And I think Al Franken deserved all the grief that he got, and he probably should have resigned.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you can't really run around gloating over Al Franken having to resign when you are a Donald Trump supporter.
Yeah.
I mean, that takes an incredible amount of
lack of self-awareness.
Lack of self-awareness. Yeah.
No, it is kind of incredible how, people can believe one set of allegations and not another. And I think we're going to hear a lot more politicians sort of implicated. Obviously, we had the Trent Franks resignation last week.
Yeah.
But I think it's notable that Trent Franks did resign. Paul Ryan never called on him to resign.
I mean, Paul Ryan issued that statement that made it sound like he was
the one that asked for it.
He was. Yeah. That it came up to him and who.
But Paul Ryan did publicly say John Conyers ought to resign.
Yeah.
He never publicly said Trent Franks ought to resign, and he still has not said that Blake Farenthold should resign.
No, but I mean, like I said, I think there's going to be a lot more, and I think every set of allegations is a little bit different. That kind of see how they thread that and how they kind of decide which one. And I think a lot of this is going to have to do with politics. And when you look and say, well, who's a safe seat and who is a Roy Moore who might be giving a seat to a Democrat in Alabama, I think it's just at the beginning, and we're going to see a lot of kind of hypocrisy and a lot of uncomfortable decisions.
To me, the weakest argument that the White House keeps coming up with, and we just heard Sarah Sanders use it again, is, okay, all these women made these accusations, but then he was elected president. So therefore, it's over. Therefore, it never happened.
I mean, that's a precedent they're not going to love setting if allegations come out against a Democrat.
You could say about Al Franken. He was elected senator. Boom. Then it'll be over with.
Yeah.
Right? They'll make that. Some people will probably make that argument against Roy Moore.
Yeah.
Well, the people of Alabama knew what the allegations were.
No, I've seen that argument made already. So.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's definitely an argument they're going to make. I'm sure there's going to be a point where they're going to try to step back from that argument against a Democrat, but I guess we'll just have to see where the chips fall.
Right. Now, again, I don't think we're going to see congressional hearings as these women talked about yesterday, but my feeling is we haven't heard the last of these 13 women about
No, not at all.
No, right. Hey, Tierney, so good to see you.
Great seeing you.
Thanks much. Have a great, great holiday.
Yeah.
And you can follow Tierney Sneed at Talking Points Memo, talkingpointsmemo.com, of course. Chris Liu joins us next. He's with the Miller Center at the University of Virginia and a former Deputy Secretary of Labor under President Obama. So hang in there. Stay tuned. Hour number 2 is coming up.
This is the Bill Press Show.
I wanted to find a bank with a purpose. I wanted to find a place that would take my money and not use it to cause the financial crisis, but to fix the financial crisis and to help end income inequality.
The people that we employ are usually clients right off the streets. They don't have an account, but Amalgamated is willing to get that started for them.
Their reputation supporting the working man, I think, speaks for itself. This is a bank that cares for their customers, and I appreciate that.
We were able to access a construction loan through the bank's programs, and that loan has helped us house 28 families in the community.
Amalgamated is a bank that was started for and about working people.
Many of our customers have a deep commitment to advocating for social and economic justice. We share that commitment, and we're not afraid to stand up and say that we need to change some of the way that the country does business.
Giving you everything you need to fight the Trump administration. This is The Bill Press Show. Live at youtube.com/The Bill Press Show.
Decision day in Alabama. Okay, people of Alabama, get out and vote and do the right thing. Reject Roy Moore. Send us a good man by the name of Doug Jones to Washington, D.C. Hello, everybody. Great to see you on a Tuesday, December 12. How about it? It is the Bill Press Show. You are part of it, of course, wherever you are in this great land of ours, coast to coast. We're coming to you live from our studio in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill with all the news of the day. Two big stories we've been following. The first of all, again, this election in Alabama. Doug Jones and Roy Moore both having their final big rallies last night. Now it is all up to turnout. Hard to believe that the Secretary of State of Alabama predicts 25% voter turnout for an election that everybody in the whole damn country is talking about. We hope he or she, I'm not sure, is wrong, and the people of Alabama give this election the attention it deserves and send the right person to Washington. And also, 4 women that we heard from last year, they were ignored last year when they came out with their charges of sexual harassment and worse, sexual assault against Donald Trump. They are back and calling for now a congressional investigation into those charges in this Me Too moment. Will Donald Trump have his time in this Me Too moment? He should. All of that coming up with our special guest. Chris Liu is a former Deputy Secretary of Labor, now with the University of Virginia's great Miller Center. Hello, Chris. Nice to see you.
It's great to be here.
Thanks so much for coming in.
Absolutely.
We got lots to talk about. We'll jump right to it. But first, Peter with the big headlines here.
Full Court Press.
Yes, indeed. Just a couple of other stories making news. Sad news as this morning as San Francisco Mayor Ed Lee is dead at the age of 65.
No, so sad.
He died early this morning at the Zuckerberg San Francisco General Hospital. This is according to a statement from his office. Now, this means that the Board of Supervisors President, London Breed, immediately becomes acting mayor of San Francisco. Breed will talk to reporters later on today, but that's a shock for a lot of people.
A real shocker. He's a great guy. Met him several times. Has been a great leader for San Francisco as mayor and before that as mayor. Chris, you probably knew Ed Lee too.
Yeah, I had a chance to meet Ed a couple of times when I was in the White House in the first term. I was the cabinet secretary, so we interacted with many of the mayors. And then in 2015, as the Deputy Secretary of Labor, I went out to do an event with him. The mayor was working hard to diversify the workforce in the IT sector. and had come up with some interesting training models to bring in underprivileged people. So we toured a job training center together. I would also say he was a legend in the Asian American community. I don't think most people know this. First Asian American mayor of San Francisco, had devoted the early part of his career.
It's just surprising, given the Asian American community in San Francisco.
Given the community.
Yeah.
He had, and it's an interesting story. I mean, he had come up as basically a lawyer working, I think, with the Asian Law Caucus, and then had been the city administrator, and then had been sort of elevated to mayor, I think, when Gavin Newsom became lieutenant governor, because it was seen he was going to be the caretaker, and he wasn't going to run. He turned out to be a fantastic mayor.
As we near the end of the year, all of these big end-of-the-year lists are out. Well, this morning, Merriam-Webster has their list for Word of the Year for 2017.
I thought we already had that.
Not Merriam-Webster's. Merriam-Webster's.
Merriam-Webster's
Word of the Year for 2017 is feminism. They say that lookups for the word feminism on their website have increased 70% since last year and spiked several times after key events. Gee, I wonder which events they could possibly be talking about.
Yeah, you wonder, right?
Yeah, so that is the word of the year according to Merriam-Webster.
Maybe the last list was complicity. Complicit, yeah.
Yes, Ivanka Trump look forward to being complicit in her father's campaign.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
D-Day in Alabama, Tuesday, December 12. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Bill Press Show as we roll into hour number 2 here with lots to talk about. Coming to you live from Washington, D.C., and we are joining you online on YouTube, youtube.com/The Bill Press Show. If you're watching online, don't forget to sign up and become a subscriber to The Bill Press Show. And you will hear from us all throughout the day with all of our updates. We join you also on Free Speech TV, Coast to Coast, and on the great progressive voice of Chicago, WCPT, out in the greater Chicago area. In studio with us, Chris Lee is a former Deputy Secretary of Labor under President Obama, former Cabinet Secretary for the President as well, and now with the Miller Center at the University of Virginia. Chris, you're also a member of the DNC, correct?
I was just appointed by Chairman Tom Perez, who was my boss as the Secretary of Labor.
Nice. To the DNC. So yesterday, Nina Turner was in, who is a member of the DNC. She's president of Our Revolution, and she is on the Reform Commission that was established after the last convention to take a look at things like superdelegates, caucuses, closed primaries, and all those issues, which will be before the Rules and Bylaws Committee. Are you on that committee?
I am on that committee.
You're on that committee, and then before the full DNC. Have you had a chance to look at their recommendations are to cut superdelegates by 60%. Have you had a chance to look at it yet, and how do you vote?
I did find this sort of amusing. I become a superdelegate, and I may end up, my first action will be to cut my own powers. You know, look, I've had a chance to take a look at that. I'm not going to prejudge it until I have a chance to be briefed more fully on it. I think this is an important moment in the party's history. I mean, we've kind of gone from primaries, nominees being decided in back rooms to kind of a more open primary system post 68, 72, and I think it's appropriate. And then we kind of shifted back again. I think it's appropriate to find the right balances between primaries, caucuses, open primaries, closed primaries, superdelegates, and so this is an important moment.
Do you feel that people who represent a state should have to follow the will of the people of the state? I mean, if California, let's say, votes for, name a candidate, right? Elizabeth Warren, right? Should their senators or elected officials be able to go off and say, no, we don't care about Elizabeth. We don't care what you think. You know, we'd rather support Sherrod Brown.
You know, it's an interesting thing because there are at-large members of the DNC who are elected through their state, and then there's 75 that are elected by the chair, including myself. Mm-hmm. I live in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I certainly share many of the values of people in Virginia, but I wasn't put on the DNC as a representative of my state. And so I think that is one of the interesting dynamics that's going to come. And it'll be interesting to see, what in the end the role of superdelegates becomes.
Well, one of the points that that Nina made yesterday is that this decision, given the recommendations of the Reform Committee, whatever it's called, committee, that the decision is far from over. There's going to be a lot of discussion at the Rules and Bylaws Committee and at the full membership in the spring meeting of the DNC. And I think you confirmed that point, that this decision is far from over. So
I was heartened by the fact
people who are interested go to Democrats.org.
I think it's .org.
Yes, .org. Yes.
No, I was going to say I was heartened by the fact that the commission did reach this recommendations on a unanimous vote, and this was obviously a very contentious issue with representatives of both the Sanders and the Clinton
represents a real compromise.
It absolutely is, and so I think it needs to be taken a careful look at.
What's going to happen in Alabama?
I think win or lose, this is a victory for the Democratic Party. I mean, I think.
How can you say that?
Well, obviously, if we win, that's picking up a seat. I think, I can't imagine what would do more to help make Nancy Pelosi the Speaker and Chuck Schumer the Senate Majority Leader than having Roy Moore hung around every candidate in 2018. Republicans are
hung around their neck. Right. Yeah.
It's not an analogy I'd like to use speaking about Alabama, but I will say that they're already facing significant headwinds with Trump, and the yard sign I'm going to put out there is no more Trump, and MOORE Trump. And I think every Republican candidate is going to have to answer for not only its support from the RNC, but for the controversial positions that Roy Moore has taken.
It's interesting because I made the opposite point on CNN, saying the same thing, that win or lose, it's bad for the Republicans either way because of the points that you made.
Right.
If they win, they're stuck with this turkey, right, and going to have to defend him in 2018 or throw him out, which I don't think they will. And if they lose, they get a Democrat in the United States Senate.
I started my career on Capitol Hill in the 90s, and I remember Democrats, made great headway running against Newt Gingrich in elections, and we've seen more recently Republicans running against Nancy Pelosi. I can't imagine a more toxic combination for Republican staff to defend than Donald Trump and Roy Moore, particularly in those swing suburban districts where, as we saw in Virginia, they're having a difficult time keeping those right now in their own side, and that Roy Moore, that's going to be very challenging for them.
Isn't it interesting to see? I mean, I made the point earlier that just the fact that they're having this election today, to me, shows how clueless the Republican Party has become. I mean, there were some wiser voices early on when these sexual allegations, these pedophilia allegations against Roy Moore came out, that, whoa, let's slow things down and let's delay it and delay the date and push the election into 2018, give somebody else a chance, a Republican, to mount a campaign or put together a real strong writing campaign. No. They said, no, we're going to go ahead and hold it December 12th. So they blew one opportunity to save themselves, right? I guess they really feel that they can do whatever they want in America, and the people will accept it.
Well, look, optimistically, I look at the comments from Senator Shelby this weekend where he, pretty clearly disavowed Roy Moore, and I think, Shelby is clearly as conservative as they come, but he understands that Alabama is changing, and having spent a little bit of time down there, they have a burgeoning high-tech industry down there. It is a place where increasingly people are coming back to after going to college, and I think he just sees what this means for the state's reputation and how it sends them backwards to a place that isn't as friendly to businesses and for people to move to. And so this is an important moment for America. It's certainly an important moment for Alabama as well.
Yeah, I heard part of a conversation again on CNN yesterday about why did Shelby do this? And the speculation was, well, he has a chance to be head of the appropriation if something happens to Thad Cochran or something. He's never really liked Roy Moore. He never got along with him or whatever, I said, there's another chance. Maybe he just sees that this is not good, right? That he's got some moral character and knows that Roy Moore is not somebody he wants to support. Maybe he's doing the right thing. I know that's hard to say for some member of Congress sometimes, but in this case, I think he did.
And I think the interesting thing will be, I mean, we've heard Tim Scott over the weekend even say that, he's anticipating an ethics investigation as soon as Moore is seated. Look, I'm sort of skeptical that will actually happen. I think if Moore wins, I think some of this opposition kind of melts away, but we'll see.
Yeah. Meanwhile, they started yesterday, I believe, when I got off the subway last night, about 8 o'clock. The light was still on the Capitol. They were working away. I figured up to no good. Probably the conference committee meeting on this tax cut bill. What's your expectation? And of course, today's election could change the vote count. But let's assuming it stays where it is now in the Senate. What's your expectation? Are they going to get a tax cut bill through, and how good or how bad is it?
I don't know, and I think there are still many hurdles to overcome before we get to a final product that they want to apparently get voted on next week. I mean, right now the math doesn't work out, and to try to make some of the changes, whether it's on the corporate AMT, whether it's adjusting a state tax, how they handle the individual mandate, these are all important policy decisions, but they also add or subtract money to the final amount. And right now they're stuck with $1.5 trillion, which is how high as they can go to meet the Senate reconciliation rules. And so, if they eliminate the corporate AMT, I think that's $173 billion that they need to find somewhere else. And so, look, at the end of the day, they will come up with a compromise. Is it one that Susan Collins, Jeff Flake, John McCain can vote on? I think you start to see over the weekend Collins start to back away a little bit from the vote, and I think she realizes now that she probably got taken as part of the negotiations.
Oh yeah.
And I think Flake may soon find out that his assurances of being part of any DACA conversation were pretty empty as well. So it will be interesting.
But they knew what they were getting into. They knew this is who Donald Trump is. I mean, you can't go into this to this argument or this negotiation with Donald Trump in good faith and say like, oh, okay, well, he said I'm going to get this, so surely I feel safe about it. Like they probably just laughed at them when they walked out.
They were suckered. They were totally suckered.
Completely.
Yeah.
For Donald Trump, the art of the deal is reneging on deals, and that's what he has done throughout his entire business and political career.
Yeah. And that's what he's doing here. So what you're saying is there's a chance they won't get a bill.
I think there's a chance, but I think given the priority that the White House has put on this, and this is part of core Republican principles to cut taxes, I think they will eventually
for
get
the wealthiest of
for the wealthiest of Americans.
Right.
It is interesting. I mean, if you go back and look at Ronald Reagan's tax reform, and it generally was tax reform in 1986. Ronald Reagan said he wasn't signing it unless it was revenue neutral, and he was able to cut the individual tax rates, and then he added the money back on the corporate side. This is not a tax bill that Ronald Reagan would have signed.
No, this is not tax reform by any measure.
No, and we should stop calling it tax reform. It's a tax cut for the wealthy bill.
In fact, I've noticed, that's all Donald Trump calls it, tax cuts. At least he's honest about that. Tax cut, tax cut, tax cut. That's what we're delivering at Christmas. He doesn't say tax reform anymore, tax cuts. So in terms of, you talked about the burden of carrying Roy Moore with them into the midterm elections of 2018. There's another burden they're going to carry, which is this tax cut bill, right?
Yeah, the polling on this thing is terrible. The USA Today poll yesterday found that it polls worse than any major piece of legislation passed in the last 30 years, including the ACA. The other poll that 538 did last week, they compared the approval rating of this thing. This tax cut, and I'll in parentheses, in quotation marks, this tax cut polls worse than the 1993 Clinton tax increase and the 1990 Bush tax increase. So when your tax cut polls worse than a tax increase, that is not a good thing. And clearly the American people have seen through this. The overwhelming majority do not believe their taxes will get cut.
Right. And whatever number approve it now, don't you think that number has to go down once most people really don't know the details of this bill yet, but once they see that they're getting screwed, right? Once they see who's really benefiting from this bill, which may not Well, let's hope that they discover that before the midterms and not after.
Well, and it's important, I think, for progressives to continue to air the facts on this. And I think it's, this is one where we can't rest after, again, assuming a bill gets passed. I mean, we need to keep hammering home the implications of this for people earning $75,000, the $1 trillion of debt this adds to 13 million people who are going to lose health insurance when the individual mandate goes away. And I think keep hammering that home. And I think Democratic candidates will have a field day with this next year.
Mm-hmm. Now, we are in this little interregnum here. Again, our guest, Chris Liu and you can follow Chris on Twitter, Chris Liu 44, right?
That's right.
That's it to the old Obama 44.
It's the old Obama 44.
Right. How about, were you surprised that I know, tangent here, but that President Obama jumped into the Alabama race yesterday with the robocall?
I'm not, because, he was in campaigning in New Jersey and Virginia in those elections. He waited till the very end. I think the calculation was less whether he wants to be political. I think he certainly wants to be political at the appropriate times. I think it was more whether the outside help would be meaningful or not. And I think the decision was obviously Doug Jones needs a very, very heavy turnout among African Americans. There's no one who could fire up that group more than Barack Obama. And actually, Joe Biden is out there making a robocall and actually has emailed folks on behalf of Jones as well.
Right. And the president has a record of delivering the African American vote in Alabama, a record high at times. So if they remember that, come out and vote for his guy. That could be very helpful to Doug Jones. So what I started to say is we're in this interregnum now between last Friday and December 22nd. And they were able to keep the government alive again, or the lights on for 2 weeks, which is pretty sad. That's about as much as you can expect out of this Congress, right? I mean, that's all they can accomplish.
And it's sad given the fact that they have unified government. I mean, they could pass the budget on their own with all Republican votes. And the fact that you've got...
They control everything, and this is the best they can do.
Right. I mean, Trump is still out there, beating on Pelosi and Schumer for obstructing on this. I mean, if he could get his votes, he could get this budget passed, but he can't. And I think the Freedom Caucus is going to make the next couple of weeks very interesting.
So coming up against a deadline, it's hard to believe that they would let Christmas happen with the government shutdown, this date of December 22nd. But at the same time, there are some hurdles they have to overcome, right, before they can get another continuing resolution.
Yeah. Look, I think it's getting the numbers right. I think obviously conservatives want to increase the defense spending. Democrats aren't going to allow that unless there's an equal increase on the domestic side as well. And then I think the other question is really how hard Pelosi and Schumer push for DACA, for healthcare fixes in there. If I were on their side, I would say, look, this is the most leverage you're ever going to have. I would put it all in there and say, well, look, we're not giving you the votes, and we're willing to shut down the government over this. But we'll see what happens.
Right. I was just going to say, this is their best moment, isn't it?
Right. I mean, this is the
They'll
only...
never have the leverage that they've got right now.
And then the only question...
unless they get power back,
right.
But as a minority party.
If they play that card, I think the question will be is what effect Trump has on the Freedom Caucus and whether he can twist enough arms to get people to vote for this. So far they've been willing to fall in line with him on difficult votes. Although on the ACA originally, I mean, they were withholding their votes. So, look, we've got Mick Mulvaney, who was a former member of the Freedom Caucus, who now appears to be all for adding more debt. So we'll see what happens.
Right. Do you think Trump would make a deal on DACA?
I mean, we had that remarkable moment a couple months ago in the Oval Office.
It looked like he was ready to.
It looked like he was ready, and I think he caught enough heat not only from the folks within the White House but from his base, and he pulled away from that. Again, the politics of this one are squarely in the Democrats' favor. I mean, not only the polling on this issue, but also you've got so many Republican moderates who think this is the right thing to do. I mean, the only question is whether there's actually a pathway to citizenship in there or not. But there is a deal to be cut.
But isn't the fear for Democrats that if they were to hang tough and the result of that was the government shuts down, that they get blamed for it?
Yeah,
I mean, remember the Newt Gingrich shutdown, right?
Right. You know, and I lived through in the Obama administration one actual shutdown in 2013, and then a couple aborted shutdowns along the way. Again, I think this is the messaging challenge, and I think the question would be is why Republicans can't keep the government open when they have the votes on their side.
It's going to be really hard to blame Democrats. Really hard to blame Democrats.
Yeah. But of course, Donald Trump blames them now for for everything. Everything. And including he paid all those women to come forward yesterday in that news conference.
You know, and he's tweeting about it again this morning.
Mm-hmm. Right. Tying that with Russian collusion.
Absolutely, because it's all one and the same.
Right. So the big question is, how many Diet Cokes do you drink a day?
I will tell you, I have many criticisms of the president. As my wife can tell you, Coke Zero is my drink of choice. And I will do a half dozen easily in an afternoon.
A half dozen?
I will do a lot. I will do a lot, actually. I can knock it out for. So that I will criticize him on many things. I will not criticize him on that, although 12 is even a little extreme for me.
12's a lot, man.
12 is a lot. And then you add on top of that his TV watching.
Which is, according to the New York Times, 4 or up sometimes double that, 8 hours a day. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I don't understand this. I mean, I worked for Barack Obama for 4 years in the White House. I saw what his schedule was like. I saw all the things we had to get done. And even as packed as his schedule was, we still couldn't get everything. How does the business of the country get done when the president's just watching TV? And the remarkable the color from those anecdotes of how he sits there and the TV's on the entire time he has meetings. He controls the remote control, and that if he misses something, he goes back and watches it on TV. I mean, that's a lot of time.
An awful lot of time, right? These anecdotes came from an article Sunday, New York Times, written by Maggie Haberman, Peter Baker, and Glenn Thrush, and the funny part of that too was, well, I guess in David Bossi's book, he talks about the fact that the Diet Coke stuff as well, and that Trump would order Diet Cokes for other people, even though he wouldn't ask them what they wanted to drink because he drinks Diet Coke. He orders them a Diet Coke as well.
What's more American than eating 4 sandwiches from McDonald's, a chocolate shake, and washing it down with a Diet Coke?
Mm-hmm. I mean, that was in the Bossy book. The other funny thing is, like, when they do these campaign stops, they would basically, the last thing they would load on was these big, armfuls of fast food before the plane took off.
Right. Yeah. You're referring to that the classic dinner was 2 Big Macs, 2 Filet-O-Fish sandwiches. That was to balance off the Big Macs, right? So you don't feel as guilty about eating the Big Mac and the chocolate shake.
By the way, I found out that
no fries?
That apparently
there must have been fries.
Apparently he takes the buns.
Were there fries?
No, there were no fries.
Had to be.
Well, according to the book, there weren't. Apparently he takes the buns off of these, which is so much grosser to me. Like, just these, like.
He's on a paleo diet, Peter.
Yeah, he's a paleo warrior, right? Yeah, sure, of course. But like this, like limp, gross lettuce with these like dime-sized gray burger patties, and it's just.
I will say one serious point. David Gergen tweeted something the other day that I retweeted. He said, "What's remarkable about that story is there's no mention of Trump exercising or spending time with his family."
No.
And Gergen makes the appropriate point, both for Bush 43 and Obama. Exercise family was a source of strength for them.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's a good point. And both of them did exercise. W did for sure, and Barack Obama, you know better than I, every day. But there's no mention of that. The only time is playing golf, which riding around in a golf cart, let's face it, is not a lot of exercise, I can tell you, as a former golfer at any rate. The other thing about I have to say, Diet Pepsi's a lot better than Diet Coke.
No, Bill, I'm going to have to disagree with you on this one.
That is a bad take.
I'm sorry. And I do one a day. If I do one a day, I feel guilty.
Sure.
12? Can't imagine it. But I'm impressed you do a half a dozen a day.
It's a lot actually. And I'll go from these several coffees I'm having right now to the Coke Zero. I'll just segue seamlessly into it in a couple hours.
All right. So, Mr. DNC member, tell us, how do things look for 2018 for Democrats?
I think things look great. I mean, I think look, Historically, presidents obviously do poorly in off-year elections. I painfully was in the White House in 2010 when we lost those 60-some seats. You've got a historically unpopular president. As you mentioned, I think the tax cut, I think the healthcare issues, I think these are will resonate with voters, as we saw in New Jersey and Virginia. I was astounded. Vox did a piece yesterday where they looked at the number of Democratic candidates and how much money they have raised. It's something like 350 some Democratic candidates that have already raised more than $5,000, and like 110 that have already raised more than $100,000. It is overwhelming the number of people that are running. The challenge is, and I see this from my former colleagues in the Obama administration, we have a lot of people running in primaries against each other. Down in the Pete Sessions seat in Dallas, there are 3 former Obama people running against each other for the Democratic nomination. So we are cannibalizing each other a little bit, but
that's better than not having a candidate.
That is better than not. And as we found in the Virginia General Assembly, the House of Delegates, you have to have people running if you want to win some of these seats. So I feel good about things, but obviously, we are still 11 months away. A lot of things could happen.
Right. The Chairman Perez says, I think, says it best. Every zip code matters, right? So where before we gave up on some House seats or state legislative seats because they've always been represented by Republican. Now, the challenge is, and I have to give a lot of credit to groups like Emily's List, Our Revolution, Indivisible, MoveOn.org. They're recruiting candidates to run for these city council seats, state legislative seats, governors, all the way. And there ought to be a candidate on the ballot in every single one of them.
Yeah,
right?
And absolutely. It's not only every zip code matters, but it's also competing in every seat from the school board to the Senate to the presidency.
Yeah.
And I think it's also reimagining what the role of the DNC is. I mean, the DNC cannot be what it was 20 or 30 years ago because of the prevalence of outside money. And so understanding the role of the DNC, working together with the indivisible, the resistance groups, and not kind of overpowering them.
Right. Hey, Chris, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for coming in. Have a great holiday.
Thank you.
Come see us again soon. Again, you can follow Chris on Twitter at Chris Lou, L-U, Chris Lou 44. And joining us next, Eliza Collins covers the Congress for USA Today. So stay tuned. Quick break. We'll be right back.
I know one thing. Nobody can come down here and tell folks in Alabama what to do.
Follow us on Twitter at BP Show. This is The Bill Press Show.
All right, friends, we got some big news today as we close up this pledge drive for Free Speech TV. This is the last week. Remember, if you haven't already made your pledge, please do so today and be as generous as you can in this holiday spirit to keep Free Speech TV on the air. Remember, again, we depend on you entirely for Free Speech TV. No government money, no corporate money, no Koch brothers money. It's all you. We give you the news every day. We give you our best progressive take on the news every day. You keep us on the air, and you tune in every day. What a great partnership. Let's keep it going. So please, today, make your pledge for Free Speech TV. Make your contribution to keep Free Speech TV alive and on the air. 877-378-8669 is how you do it by phone, 877-378-8669, or go online to freespeech.org/donate. Now, here is the big news. Thanks to one of our great, great friends, we have a $10,000 matching gift for the rest of this week, for the rest of the pledge drive. A friend has given that $10,000 to Free Speech TV in memory of his friend, Ms. Jane. And that means that up to $10,000 for every dollar you give, it'll be matched by our good friend, again, in honor of Ms. Jane. So that means help with $30. That's a $60 pledge, equivalent to a $60 pledge. Help with 60, that's $120. I don't have to do all the math. Help with $500, that's a $1,000 pledge, and you can make your way to Washington, and Carol and I will take you out to dinner, and we'll invite you in to meet the whole team and have a great time here in the show. So please take advantage of this opportunity. As we've told you several times, there are lots of good reasons to to be part of the Free Speech TV team and to contribute to Free Speech TV. Yes, to keep Free Speech TV on the air. Yes, to fight back against Donald Trump and be part of the resistance, which starts right here every day on Free Speech TV. And yes, to take advantage of that tax deduction at the end of the year. And now, yes, to take advantage of this $10,000 matching gift. Double your money, double your fun right here at Free Speech TV. But do it today. Do it now. Operator standing by to take your call at 877-378-8669, 877-378-8669, or you can go to freespeech.org/donate, freespeech.org/donate. But please, don't let Free Speech TV fail. Don't let Free Speech TV go away. Keep us on the air with your pledge. Thank you.
Same great show, new great channel. Stream live video at youtube.com/The Bill Press Show.
Yes, it is Election Day in Alabama. It seems like it's Election Day nationwide. There's been so much attention to the Senate race in Alabama. People of Alabama, one last time, we beg you, get out and vote. Get out and vote and do the right thing and reject Roy Moore. Hello, everybody. This is the Bill Press Show on Tuesday, December 12th, coming to you live from Washington, D.C., and we welcome all of you to the program. Don't forget, your comments always welcome on Twitter at BP Show. And to studio, we welcome Eliza Collins, congressional reporter, a good friend of ours, congressional reporter for USA Today. Hello, Eliza. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, too.
All right. Just a little time out to say, I know you must be frustrated. Maybe it's less than 2 weeks for Christmas, frustrated by don't know what the hell to get for yourself or someone you love. Oh, I got the answer right here. Look at this. You can get a scarf like this one, a hand-woven scarf, a work of art by my wife, Carol Press, each one individually hand-woven. This one, a beautiful purple with a little black twill to it or whatever. Go to our website, BillPressShow.com, and check it out. Follow the link to Carol Press scarves. You'll see lots of different colors and designs to choose from for yourself again or for someone you love.
Bill, what's the Christmas shipping cutoff date? That's the question everybody asks.
I know. It's, well, not yet, put it that way. Probably the end of the week, but I'll tell you, Carol's running over the post office several times a day. I said earlier, there's nobody busier than Carol at the post except for Amazon. They ship out more packages. She's second only to Amazon. So, BillPressShow.com. Follow the link. Carol Press scarves. I'll tell you when the cutoff date is. So, Eliza, we heard from a group of Americans yesterday with a very special request for members of Congress. It was a news conference held up in New York by 4 women. Here is one of them, Jamie, asking Congress to do the right thing.
I ask that Congress put aside their party affiliations and investigate Mr. Trump's history of sexual misconduct.
Mm-hmm. Is that going to happen?
No. I mean, probably not. But it is if you're a Republican in Congress, you're very uncomfortable this week for a lot of reasons, starting with Roy Moore. Very well could be part of your caucus tomorrow. And then all of these allegations of sexual misconduct nationwide, and now they're coming into Congress, are bringing back up President Trump, who has more than a dozen. I think it's like 15 or 16 allegations. Mm-hmm. We saw some of them again yesterday. They're coming back up, and they're saying, hey, if you're saying that the woman, accusing members of Congress should be believed, hey, Paul Ryan, if you're kicking out Trent Franks for conversations regarding surrogacy, then, hey, look at the top of your party. And so it's an uncomfortable position for Republicans to be in, but they have the majorities in the House and the Senate, and they're probably not going to investigate the president.
But this is, people are calling it the Me Too moment, right? I guess the question is, and Nikki Haley stepped into that territory Sunday, right?
Right.
The question is whether or not Donald Trump should have his Me Too moment. And she seemed to say, yeah, he should.
Right.
I wonder how that went over at the White House.
I'd imagine not great. But it is hard because she is such a sort of force within the administration and very highly respected, and a woman who has tried to sort of carve her own path with connections to the White House, but not, she seems to like be carving her own way and sort of solidifying her political future beyond this. And so it's hard if you're a female in politics to say, I don't believe women.
I had a conversation yesterday with a Trumper, a person who was very much on the inside of the Trump campaign, who said that they didn't feel that Nikki Haley was a real team player on this issue during the campaign. That when they were looking for people who would defend Trump and attack these women and question look for witnesses people who would dispute it and go on television and defend Donald Trump, Nikki Haley would not. So there's a little history here. This is one issue where maybe she feels strongly about as a woman and should. And is saying, I'm not going to give him a pass.
And remember, she was a strong Marco Rubio endorser. She was not with Trump until the very end. And that was really because she was elected for a position.
Right.
So she was not on TV defending him.
Yeah. Right. I mean, she also has aspirations bigger than where she is now. So, it's going to be awfully hard. I mean, look, this whole reckoning that we keep talking about bad men with their terrible behavior is not going to go away.
Yes.
I mean, it might fade in and out here and there, but like we're at a moment now that I really don't think we're going to go back. And so does she really want to be on the record as being one of the people to beat up and discredit an accuser of sexual assault or sexual harassment? Not if you want a future in politics, I don't think so.
And she seems to certainly want a future in politics.
Yeah, exactly.
And she's also been someone, who has sort of avoided criticism from Trump's critics, right? She's kind of been respected by both parties, and she's done a few things that bother people, but she's sort of stayed out. So I can't imagine she wants to step in on something like this.
I'm somewhat surprised that Donald Trump, who usually doesn't hesitate to lash out at anybody who is in any way critical of him, has not tweeted about. I mean, after all, he's going after Jeff Sessions. He's going after other members of his cabinet. That he hasn't said anything about Nikki Haley. There's been silence on that part.
Yeah, that is very interesting.
So in terms of this issue not going away for Donald Trump, it's not going away for members of Congress either, is it? I mean, we should not think that John Conyers and Al Franken on one side or Trent Franks on the other side is the end of the story.
Definitely not. And if I ask, I've just started to ask sources in conversations, who are names? And people everybody knows some name. Look into this person, and how much credibility, we're not sure. But I'm sure every reporter covering Capitol Hill is hearing the same thing.
We have heard from several reporters that there are several outlets who are looking at going after major stories in Congress.
Right.
That there will be other big names in Congress who will be named.
Yes, and I think the rumor is there's like 30 to 40. We don't know.
Whoa.
We do not know what that level is. I do not know 30 to 40, but I definitely am hearing names, and people, I think, are hearing names. And if everybody hears 5 names, suddenly you might be at 30 to 40.
Are you working on any big stories right now in that line?
Well, we're always looking into that stuff, but I can't give anything away. You're talking to sources
Name names.
You're talking to sources and seeing, how much credibility there is and it's difficult because some of these people, I mean, looking at the Farrenhold thing, who was someone who a couple of years ago, a former staffer, left and then filed a lawsuit alleging that it was like a really inappropriate hostile work environment, and the lawsuit was very graphic and detailed, but she basically, I think there was a settlement and she could not talk about it. And Politico did a story recently about how it pretty much ruined her life. She has not been able to get a job. She had to leave Washington because she couldn't get a job here, and she's like a 30-year-old woman, very qualified, who is babysitting, and that's how she's making money, and her parents are helping her. And so that people see that and are scared to talk.
Mm-hmm. And in some cases, legally, they can't.
Right. She could not talk.
If there's a confidentiality agreement.
Right. She's talking now, but not about what happened, but about her experience after. And there's a very clear line, like, I cannot talk about what
so
that
you
was.
alluded to this a little earlier. What does it mean then if it goes this way in Alabama today? What does it mean for this issue and for Republican Senate in general if Roy Moore becomes a member of the Senate?
Well, we can talk about the good thing for Republicans first. They keep the seat red. Mm-hmm. They have a vote probably on their big issues. I say probably because Roy Moore is a little bit
I was going to say, is he going to give Mitch McConnell what Mitch McConnell wants?
He's certainly going to have some big asks. I think people are assuming he's someone like a Rand Paul, who, you know, when it comes down to it, will usually vote with the party. He's certainly not voting with Democrats on most issues. But that being said, he has no problem. We saw Rand Paul vote against Obamacare repeal because he didn't, the first versions, because he didn't think it went far enough, and, you know, held out his vote on taxes for a while. So Roy Moore would probably be someone like that. You could also make the argument that if Doug Jones, a Democrat, wins, he might actually vote with Republicans more than Roy Moore because he wants to keep his seat in conservative Alabama. That's the good news, if you can call it good news.
Yeah, I mean, let's say Doug Jones, they all call him the liberal Nancy Pelosi Democrat. He's not.
No, he's an Alabama
I'd
Democrat.
vote for him in a heartbeat. But, I mean, he'll be more of a Joe Manchin,
right,
Heidi Heitkamp Democrat.
Right.
Right?
That being
said,
that's
who he is.
Right. And we have seen, though you could argue there haven't been that many votes this year, and so we went into this year thinking a Joe Manchin or Heidi Heitkamp would be voting with Republicans on a lot of issues, and they haven't. So there is sort of, Democrats have remained really united. We always say, Chuck Schumer always says, I have Joe Manchin and Bernie Sanders united on such and such issue. So there's that question mark. The bad news for Republicans is that Roy Moore gets a lot of headlines, and they're not positive ones. And he has a tendency to speak out. These allegations are not going away. He's probably going to be investigated by the Ethics Committee. I mean, he's not a positive presence. Reporters are going to be constantly asking him, constantly asking his fellow colleagues, like, what you think of such and such that he said. And he's an unwieldy vote, and he brings up things like the president's allegations or that sort of stuff.
Right. Will they throw him out?
I don't think so. I think, well, they're not going to not seat him. That seems to be sort of decided. You're even seeing someone like Senator Susan Collins, who does not like Roy Moore, has never liked Roy Moore, and she's saying, look, if these allegations are out there and the people of Alabama vote to put him in Congress, we cannot not let him come.
Right.
What could happen is that an ethics committee investigation could start, and it's assumed that that will, at least Mitch McConnell has said that will happen, and Democrats are fighting over each other to be the first one to recommend an investigation. And that could, depending on what is decided, they could expel him, but that could be years away, or they could not find anything. And
that's a 2/3 vote.
Right.
In the meantime, in 2018, as we just talked about with our former guest, Chris Liu, Republicans will have to defend
every time
every Republican running for any office in the entire country will have to answer the Roy Moore question.
Exactly.
But, they've gotten kind of good at answering the Roy Moore question. I don't mean to diminish that, because I think it's a powerful tool if we're going to get that right down to the bone about it. But they've answered that question. Yeah, it was up to the people of Alabama to decide. Yeah, people of Alabama have decided.
But as if I were the Democrat running, I would say I don't care what they say. He's their candidate. He's a Republican.
That's fair.
He is he and Donald Trump. The party, Republican Party, is the party, I would say, of Donald Trump and Roy Moore, and it is.
Yeah, I
if
think
Mr. Moore did what was alleged, he should quit the race. Now, he's denied it. The decision now is in the hands of the people of Alabama.
Yeah.
And we're seeing
Senator John Kennedy.
John Kennedy.
And we're seeing that sort of shift from people saying, absolutely not, he should step out, to now the people. And Republicans are put in a tough spot because they did come out very forcefully and say he should resign, there should be a write-in. And then President Trump said, I like this guy. And he's the head of the party, and Republicans have sort of had to figure out. Some have stayed and said, no way. We're seeing Senator Cory Gardner say, I still would not seat him.
Right.
But
yeah, Trump likes this guy because Roy Moore is following the Trump playbook. We're line for line. Deny, attack, and get elected.
And Trump got elected.
Yep. I know. It's a Trump playbook.
He is now denying, because what we were talking about earlier, these women came sort of back up, and he's denying this morning on Twitter, saying he didn't know them and things like that. These women they were on The Apprentice or were in his club, reporters who interviewed him. Right. So the I don't know them line doesn't really work, but Moore has used that before as well. So it depends what voters are willing to take, I guess. And I think the most
voters are willing to take a lot.
Right.
Voters are willing to take a lot.
The most important thing about Moore is that he is made his whole career on being a conservative defender of religion. And that, for Alabama voters, is the end-all issue. They can overlook a lot for that.
Yeah, I'll tell you about an interview I did with Roy Moore in 2005 in terms of defending religion, which I'm sure you've seen part of at any rate. It's up again today online, that interview on my interview on C-SPAN with Roy Moore.
I heard it on the New York Times podcast today, but I've seen it all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It keeps popping up. We discovered it. I forget who it was that reminded me about
Andrew Desiderio from the Daily Beast.
Andrew Desiderio, from the Daily Beast.
I've seen it.
The first one.
I think it's a yes or no. Do you think that homosexuality or homosexual conduct should be illegal today? That's a yes or no question.
Homosexual conduct should be illegal. Yes.
Should be illegal.
Yes.
Right. But
no doubt about it.
That's not the issue for the Alabama voters.
No. That I hate to say, may help him.
Right.
It will help him with some people in Alabama.
The conversation that this election could come down to abortion, being people that if that's their one issue, and he has decided that he is super against abortion, and Doug Jones has said, I support the way things are.
To which somebody should point out that abortion is the law of the land, pedophilia is not. I'm not sure whether anybody makes that connection here. As interesting as it is to talk about sexual harassment, Congress is in a tough place right now, right?
They are.
December 22nd, they bought 2 weeks. Right. That's the most they could do. Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the White House, and the most they could do is keep the government running for another 2 weeks.
Right.
What's going to happen?
As Congress does. They work in 2-week chunks, it feels like.
All right. So what are you hearing? What's going to happen on December 22nd? And will Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer hang tight on the Dreamers?
That's a really interesting question, and that's something I've been looking into. In the Senate, Democrats have some power because they need 60 votes to pass any sort of funding bill. And so if every Republican votes for something, which again, there's someone like Rand Paul or a Ted Cruz who might not, they need 8 Democrats. And if Democrats stick together and say, we're not voting for this unless there's an immigration fix in there, there's a whole other bunch of things they want in there too. Children's health insurance, they'd like disaster aid. Then they could really force Republicans' hand.
And they like the Obamacare individual mandate out?
Yes, but I don't know if that ends up being the killer.
Yeah.
I think that's a tax bill. So they have some demands. It seems like immigration is sort of the number one because disaster aid and children's health insurance do have bipartisan support, and it feels like those will kind of just get pushed through.
Disaster aid and children's health.
Yeah,
right?
CHIP, children's health insurance.
So it's Dreamers is the
thing. And that's interesting too because that really has bipartisan support.
Yeah.
It's protection for about 800,000 undocumented immigrants who came to the U.S. as children. From Obama, Trump reversed it, but gave Congress 6 months. So that would end in the beginning of March. Democrats are saying this needs to be done now, before the end of the year.
Right.
Some moderate Republicans are saying the same thing, although we've only seen 2 House members actually say, we'll withhold our votes if that's not in there. There are a lot who have said, we like this a lot, but you can count on our vote. The argument Republicans like Paul Ryan are making is that we have till March. So why jam up a spending bill must pass
Yeah.
And the Democrats
We
are
have
saying,
to march, so let's wait until 11 p.m. on the night of whatever
as
day
Congress
it is in March.
works.
Yes,
and
Congress
Democrats
works.
are saying, well, you guys are going to push through something else. Surprise, Trump wants to do infrastructure and gets pushed. The House, there are enough Republicans to pass legislation without any Democrats. And so that's where the real problem lies, because they don't need to compromise. And before Paul Ryan became Speaker, conservatives say he promised them he would not bring up any immigration legislation without the majority of the Republican Party's support. So that makes it really hard for a compromise bill when there are a lot of conservatives in the House who maybe would do the Hastert rule. Would maybe do some protections. I think most people acknowledge there needs to be some protections, but whether it's a path to citizenship, whether it's 3 more years of legal status, whether it's 3 more years of legal status and a wall, or like pathway to citizenship and nothing else, that's what they're trying to figure out right now.
Mm-hmm. But wouldn't you say, just in terms of optics, that they're not going to let the government shut down on December 22nd?
Republicans?
Anybody.
Yeah, I don't think anybody will. And if you look at Schumer and Pelosi, the way they've talked
Merry
about
Christmas.
Right.
You don't get your Social Security check this week. Yeah.
Right. And what their big line is the troops. You know, we are
They always make an
potentially
exception for
going
the
to
troops,
war with North Korea. I mean, things are really heating up. And the way Pelosi and Schumer have discussed this, they've said no government shutdown. We're not leaving without a solution. So how you do that, I'm not quite sure. But I think everyone would like to avoid a government shutdown. And there could be some sort of deal like, if we don't do this by the end of December, this is the first thing we deal with in January. Handshake.
And if they do resolve it, right? It's only going to be another temporary fix, isn't it?
Well, it really depends what it is. What they say is they want it to not be a temporary fix, and that's the idea of having a bipartisan solution where both sides give and take a little bit, and so these 800,000 people are protected, but there's not the problem of more people coming in. It's sort of the way
a temporary
Republicans
fix
argue.
in terms of they'll keep the government running for another 2 weeks, maybe.
Right. It'll probably just go into January when they'll have to work out a spending bill. Yes.
Right. Okay. Merry Christmas. Then we come back and we'll fight the same battle all over
Exactly.
again. Right. The other deadline, that the self-imposed deadline, is tax cuts by the end of the year.
Yes.
Going to happen?
I think that they feel they need it so badly that it probably will happen. The House and Senate have both passed their bills. While there are some differences in and some sticking points, overall there's a lot of overlap. And I think people are willing, when we're talking about give and take on immigration across the aisle, in taxes it's not across the aisle, but it's sort of give and take between moderates and conservatives within the party.
Right. And the conference committee has been appointed, they started work yesterday.
I think they started work over the weekend, and maybe they were at least discussing over the weekend and started hashing things out yesterday. The idea is that Wednesday Trump is going to speak on this, so presumably they'll have something, and we're hearing Friday for the bill being
this
introduced,
Friday.
But that's what we're hearing, but that sounds pretty rosy because there still are a lot of differences.
And they still need just 50 or 51 votes in the Senate.
Yes.
It's still reconciliation.
Still reconciliation. There is, so Senator Susan Collins, who voted no on the Obamacare repeal, who's pretty moderate, works with Democrats a lot, she voted yes on this last bill with a promise that the Senate and the House would pass something called Alexander Murray. It's a bipartisan bill that basically keeps paying subsidies to insurance companies to make sure premiums don't spike. She said that she was promised that would be passed into law before the next round of tax votes. I'm not really sure how that happens.
Yeah.
And so I think it's assumed they might lose her because she made a big deal about that being.
So they've
her
lost
vote.
Corker, they lose her, now they're down to 50.
They can't lose anyone else.
They can't lose one more.
Right.
If Doug Jones is elected, they're toast.
Right. So that is why I think they want Friday Because if Doug Jones is elected, he's not seated he's not seated this week.
Why not?
Oh, well, I think because the Republicans have the majority, they might try to make sure that happens.
They have to swear him in.
Look, they kept Obama from making a Supreme Court pick for a year. They're gonna keep Doug Jones
until next Monday.
Supreme Court is not elected by the people of by anybody, right?
You're right. The Republicans won't obstruct it. Yeah, you're right. We'll see what happens.
They may try.
But the president who picked that Supreme Court judge was elected by the people.
Yeah.
Yes. Huh.
They're not going to let him vote on this.
All right. We got another. Oh, that's very, very interesting. We'll see. They don't dare do that. They wouldn't dare do that. Tell me that. No.
How many times are we going to say that?
Eliza, so good to see you.
Thank you.
USAtoday.com. Have a great one, folks. We'll see you tomorrow.
This is the Bill Press Show.